Hey, Stephanie.
Yeah,
How are ya?
it's been a rough day today.
Listen, I just don't even know anymore. I just don't even know how.
Some I
Uh,
know just some days are just easier than others, and today has not been easy.
I feel like this happened on Monday. I feel like so many women that I spoke with were like, this is hard. I'm over it.
Yeah.
I am finished with, this thing.
I'm over it, and I'm over the politics that go with it. I'm over, yeah, I'm over
Your
it.
webinar has started. Why are you talking about this?
Hey, Heather.
Hi, how are you guys?
Heather, I really hope that you're holding a baby.
My husband is holding the baby.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm
Okay.
eating cookies.
Oh, good. That is good. I am happy to hear that. Eating cookies is very important.
I'll go on mute so I stop ad-libbing to your to your thing. Sorry.
All right. I have never run a Zoom, so I have to figure out. Okay, you have your camera down. Okay.
it looks like you're seeing your screen, so you're sharing your screen.
Yeah, you can see my screen. That's good. Okay. And I see people logging on, so that's good. No,
Good.
there it is. Okay, there is the, excellent. There is the thing. What I'm worried about is that there's people waiting to come in and I don't know to admit them. So I want to see how to like automatically.
Can you have two monitors?
Yes. Mute. Okay, I'm going to do that. I want to see how to let people in.
I don't think you have to put them in the waiting room. I think you can click a button in your settings.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. This is Ellen Thorpe. I'm the executive. You know what? I'm going to start that over.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ellen Thorpe, the Executive Director of National Women in Roofing. And today we are having a webinar as part of our Together More Than Ever series. And today we're going to talk about staying connected with aging parents and adorable grandchildren. Before we get started today, I want to talk a little bit about our sponsors. Our Diamond sponsors provide a significant amount of support for the association. They are also the primary sponsors of National Women in Roofing Day, which was held this past February in Dallas, Texas, and which we are planning to hold this coming February in Las Vegas as well. So we are moving forward full steam ahead with plans and just hoping that we'll be able to see each other in February. And so our Diamond sponsors are the primary sponsors of that day as well. Our founding sponsors have been with us from the very beginning, providing significant seed money to National Women in Roofing before we had even proven ourselves. And that tradition of support continues with our Platinum sponsors. These are companies that not only walk the walk, but they talk the talk when it comes to supporting women in the roofing industry. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of the webinar, but I did want to mention that we have a significant recruiting campaign going on right now. We have a committee of the association that is focused on recruitment of women into the industry, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but I wanted to give a little teaser. So Staying Connected with Aging Parents and Adorable Grandchildren. I'm joined today by Stephanie Baird. Stephanie is the General Manager of Bliss Roofing in Oregon. She's a member of the National Women in Roofing Board of Directors, and her area of responsibility is specifically on with the Community Service Committee. She has a really unique role and a great perspective to add to this conversation because she has aging parents, she has adorable grandchildren, and she also has adult children that she needs to keep in touch with every day. I have teenagers at home, but I have an awesome mom who lives far away and is a widow. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it from that perspective of staying connected with family that's far away. So I thought that we would start off by talking a little bit about differing practices and expectations. And Stephanie, when this whole Corona thing started, you had an interesting experience in that you live close to both your children and close to your parents, and you have a grandchild. And tell me a little bit about how you and your son and your daughter-in-law sort of discussed if you'd be able to see your granddaughter, and what other family members, how that might have been different for other family members. Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, okay, and that's a great question. There wasn't really too much of a discussion about it. As in so many families, I think I just kind of let them play it out. All of these uncertainties of what was going to happen and what's the best to do and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And at the beginning, the rules were changing by the hour. I watch my granddaughter on Sundays all day. My children, or my son, my daughter, and my daughter-in-law are all in the grocery business. So they're, basically the frontline workers for this COVID.
Sure.
And I watch my granddaughter on Sundays, one of my days off, while they both work. And so there was probably the end of March, a time where my daughter-in-law decided to stay home for a couple of weeks because she was unsure. She was scared. She only works one day a week at the store. Why even bother to work that one day a week at the grocery store when it's just, taking unnecessary chances? So all of us were put on a little social distancing. We're just not getting together for right now. And I completely understood it. So I FaceTimed with my granddaughter a couple of times. And she liked it. She knew that when the phone was coming out that Nanny was coming on the call, and so she liked it. And then I know that my daughter-in-law, because I run Bliss Roofing, she knows that I was in charge of all of the safety protocol here. I am in charge of making sure that we are clean and doing the right things so that we don't get shut down, and we're in Oregon, so we were deemed essential workers, and we were able to stay working. And so I just kind of let it play out. I am the grandmother, and I love being the grandmother, but the grandmother is very much different than the role of the mother. And I don't make the rules for my granddaughter. And I have faith that my children are going to make those rules for themselves, as I got the chance to make my own rules when I was the mother of young babies. So after a couple of weeks, they decided that that she was going to go back to work. And basically, I was the only one allowed in the house. So as far as anybody went, I was the only one allowed. And I still do this. If I'm going to see a baby, if I'm coming over to your house, I'm going to go instantly into the restroom, wash my hands before I pick up a baby. So we, cleaned down the phones and all the water bottles, disinfected that just for any germs. But yeah, we've just kind of done the same thing. So there was only a 2-week time period where I wasn't able to physically see my granddaughter.
Stephanie, one of the things that you and I chatted about on the phone before is that you know, very good people have differing practices and expectations about this, right? Like, you know, I'm fine with traveling on an airplane, but there's no way in heck that I'm going to eat inside a restaurant.
Sure.
Whereas somebody else might have the absolutely opposite experience. And so that's one thing I want to mention as we continue talking about this is it's okay if you don't necessarily agree with Stephanie's decision or with my decision. What we really wanted to do is just have a dialogue and sort of share our experiences and what some of the magazine articles and things are saying to consider. And so try, you know, for our listeners out there, don't necessarily get hung up on what Stephanie and I did or didn't do. Just use it as, you know, that phrase, you know, take what works and leave the rest. Because everyone's going to sort of interpret the data and the guidance from the CDC and from your state and local health department different ways. And that's totally okay. We're not going to debate, you know, whether we should be wearing double layer masks or triple layer masks. We'll save that for Facebook, right?
Yeah,
People can get all worked up about it. So you didn't necessarily, you know, sit down with your son and your daughter-in-law and say, okay, let's have a conversation and talk about this. You just sort of follow their lead, right?
I did. I followed their lead, and that's kind of my role as nanny anyways, is I follow their lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just follow their lead. Whatever the schedule is, and my daughter-in-law is so great about having a schedule and what she's supposed to eat, and I just follow what needs to be done. So
Yeah.
if there's anything that comes up different, I let her know. So
yeah. So you've had a lot of success in keeping this relationship strong because you've been able to accept the decisions that other people make. And I have two sisters, and we have a mom who is in her mid-70s, and we all grew up in Alabama, and none of us live there anymore. And so our mom is really active, and Corona has been really hard for her. She is still working at a bookstore, or she was until Alabama had to stay-at-home orders for a while. And normally we're a family where we do sit down, like, you know, we'll email each other and say, listen, we need to have a conversation about X, Y, or Z. Let's all sit down on Monday night and talk about it. But it was interesting. I decided to go and visit my mom a few weeks ago, and I did not have that conversation with my sisters. Our family was really strictly social distancing, pretty much social isolating. And one of my sisters was not. They were sort of just seeing people as normal. And I really didn't want to have that conversation with them. I was afraid that they weren't going to approve of my decision to go see my mom. And so I just didn't tell them till I got there. And my mom had mentioned to them that I was coming. And in retrospect, that probably wasn't the right thing for me to do. But, you know, we're normally a family that we do sit down and talk really openly about things. But I decided this time not to do it. And I think that may have been a mistake. I think my sisters felt sort of, not that I was asking for their approval, but they felt left out of the conversation. And we had to have not a hard conversation, but just a really brutally honest conversation about, you know, it would have been nice for me to mention it. So as the oldest sister of the bunch, I had to, you know, eat a little bit of humble pie for doing the wrong thing. But as it turns out, I had a wonderful visit with my mom. I was there with my kids for 2 weeks, and just, you know, we felt comfortable doing that because we had been so strictly social distancing. And I'll put this up in the comments later as well. I also read a lot of essays written by an epidemiologist named Aaron Bromage, and I agree with him. Other people may not, but that's totally fine. And his research, he takes existing research and interprets it. And he really believes that an airplane itself is the safest place to be, one of the safest places to be, because everyone is wearing a mask. If the middle seats are empty, and that airlines exchange all their air at a rate of every 14 minutes, and they have HEPA filters in their air exchange system on the airplane. And so his analysis was that an airplane was a really safe place to be. Unfortunately, my sisters don't like it when I cite research articles to them. So that didn't go over so well during our conversation. But I wanted to sort of illustrate this difference between a family that normally doesn't, you know, Stephanie, your family normally doesn't sit down and have an agenda and a meeting.
Mhm.
And my family does do that. This worked out well for your family. And I think that sort of differing from the norm that my family really does did not help me in this
Right.
sense. Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah. I should have stuck with what we normally do. But you have had the experience where there have been different practices for different people in your granddaughter's life. Can you talk a little bit about that and about the other grandmother in your
Yeah.
granddaughter's life?
And yeah, and it's my daughter-in-law's mother who just
Yeah.
lives 2 blocks away. But she works in the grocery business, and my son and daughter-in-law just didn't want to take the chance of more germs coming in from yet another grocery store. And Caitlin, who's my daughter-in-law, her sister still lives at home, who also works at a grocery store. So, you know, they were definitely social isolating from them. I was the only one allowed in, and even for my husband, it kind of went unsaid. It just kind of went unsaid. I wasn't going to worry about it. My husband was fine. He didn't want to be around the baby to take any chances. And so it was just one person in. But like I told you, I felt terrible for the other grandma, because even though I understand with my logical mind, I understand why these rules are in place, and I'm social isolating from everybody. Even my best friend who I run with every night, we were running on separate sides of the street. I mean, we were social isolating. I couldn't social isolate from the baby. And so had the tables been turned, and it would have been me out in the public and not being able to see my granddaughter, even though I would have understood, I would have been devastated. So my heart went out to the other grandma. You know, now we're not social isolating from them anymore. We've moved on from that. I mean, I'm still social isolating from a lot of normal things. First of all, they're not open. Second of all, I don't see any need in it. And third of all, I'm busy. I don't have time, you know. But yeah, I felt bad for her. So, and I want to tell you, Ellen, too, it's funny because we didn't really talk about it, but the way, and I tend to be the one that's in charge of all other aspects in my life, except for this one. And like I said, it's not my baby. It's not my daughter. And it's not my house. And so I feel like having adult children, I need to be able to respect their rules, their boundaries, and let them make the decisions that they need to make for their family, and just sit back and get to, you know, experience the joy of it. My granddaughter is loved. She's cherished. She's well taken care of. And she's happy, the happiest little girl you've ever met. And so that's really all that's important. And I just let them figure out the rest of the stuff.
I love that. These are the notes I'm taking. I wrote,
Okay.
Consider what is being unsaid, right? During this time, we have to show each other so much grace, give people the benefit of the doubt, be so understanding. And so you sort of considering what was being unsaid and sort of leaving your husband out of the visits, I just think that shows so much grace and generosity. So I think that that's a good tip. And then also, I wrote just, you know, to remember what people have control of, right? So socializing, we have control over that, but where you work, we don't have control over that. And so I think as people are making decisions about who is and who isn't going to be able to see a baby or a, you know, great grandma or whoever, I think it's important for people to consider what they have control over. And I don't think anybody would expect someone to like change careers where they don't work with the public so that they can have some more flexibility. So Heather, I'm going to call on you in a minute, but I wanted to talk a little bit about negotiating as well. So Stephanie also has aging parents, and we had a fun conversation about how her parents have sort of tackled this time of Corona. And so Stephanie, tell us a little bit about your mom and your stepdad and their ages and where they live. Well, if your mom doesn't mind us knowing about how old she is, and sort of how did you, because it was a little bit different. You are able to be much more directive with your parents than you are with your adult children. So share a little bit of that experience with us.
Well, I pretty much put them in lockdown. I mean, let's call it like it is. I was like, hey, my husband and I, we're gonna do the grocery shopping. I don't want you guys going out except for, you know, my stepdad still makes some deliveries, and I got him masks and everything. So they were harder to rein in definitely than the baby. They're used to doing things their own way. And my mom, Susie, is 70, and my stepdad, Paul, will be 86 in December, so 85. And they do things completely different than I do because A, it's the way they do it. B, they don't have they're not in the busy part of their life anymore. And so it was definitely like a 3-week process of getting everybody on the same page. The very first time that we took over groceries to her, like real groceries, you know, a whole bunch of stuff, my mom said to me, Steph, we don't eat this kind of chicken. We eat the fresh chicken. And I said, Susie, because I like to call her Susie to her face. I said, Susie, you can't even get an onion. Okay. I said, this is the kind of chicken we're having. And, you know, take a bite like you would to a 1-year-old. Take a bite, try it. Yeah. See how you like it. Try your broccoli, Susie. It's okay. So, and like I told you, that ended up being her favorite chicken she's ever eaten in her whole life. And now she loves that chicken, and that's all that we buy because that's what we do. So anyways, it was quite the process. And my stepdad, who is 85 years old, he got nervous about it. And him and I have a great relationship, and he respects me, gives me the utmost respect and listens to what I say, where he tends to not listen to much as his own children. But it made him nervous, and he didn't want all of his freedom taken away. And I felt bad. And so we worked on things. And I said, you guys, you don't know what it's like out there at the grocery store. The shelves are barren. It's scary. People are panic buying. I said, I don't want you out there in that. And so we came, and they're used to going to the grocery store every 2 or 3 days to get their fresh berries. They would never think to buy like a Costco amount that lasts the week, where I buy the other way because I don't want to go to the store. So that took about 3 weeks to come in, and they would forget things. And so we kind of came to a compromise, and we did it last night. She texted me, and they were out of Country Crock, I guess, whatever, it's butter. Just in case you don't know, Country Crock is a tub of butter that you put in the fridge. So, and they were out of Cool Whip, because not only do you get the list, you get exactly what they use it for. And Cool Whip, they like to have on their Ritz. And then they like to dip their strawberries in it and all this stuff. Like I need to know all that, you know. But they were out. And I said, yeah, not a problem. I'll run to Safeway. I said, and then you guys can just come pick it up tomorrow. So that was kind of the good way of negotiating, especially 2 months ago when everything was, let's sanitize, you know, and be super, super clean. I would leave it in the garage for them if they were going to come to the house, or I'd walk out to the car and social distance with them. Yeah, so we found a way to negotiate. I felt like if they were coming to my house versus me delivering it, they felt like they weren't taking advantage of me, even though they weren't taking advantage, but it gave them a little bit of, it felt like they were doing for themselves more than me just doing for them. I've always had them pay for their groceries because they don't, you know, and they get mad if I'll go like, well, don't forget about that Costco stuff you got. I got it, Mom. I'm not worried about it at all, but they're worried about it, and I don't want them to worry about it. So I just make sure the tallies are straight, and I have them pay me for everything. So
That makes sense. That makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think that's great how you were able to negotiate with them about letting them, letting them come to your house and picking up their groceries, right? That not only did that allow them some control over the situation, but then that also allowed them to feel two things, to feel like they weren't being quite as much of a burden on you, which I know you don't look at it as a burden, but it also gave them something to do. One of the things I've said to my mom is when she is like running errands or whatever, normally when you run errands, you try to group all your errands together, right? And I've said to my mom, don't run all your errands on the same day, spread them out so that you have something to do every day. And I mean, for those of us still working, it's a little bit different, right? Because, well, it's just different because you're still working. But I think when people aren't working outside the home, yeah, I've encouraged my mom to spread it out so that she has something to do. I also thought it was interesting how you talked a little bit about asking for forgiveness rather than permission when you're making arrangements for your parents. And, in another family, this may not work.
right.
I'll share a story from a friend of mine, Elaine Mogg. Elaine lives in the DC area and her parents live in Kansas, and they are in their mid 70s and early 70s and perfectly capable. But what Elaine has found is that it does not work if she tells her parents directly what to do. So she can't say to them, you should not be going to mass. I know that the church is open. You should not be going. She will say something like, oh, I read a really interesting article in USA Today that said X, Y, and Z. And then she just sort of leaves it at that. She also has found some success with her parents in just sharing what she and her children are doing. So she might say things to her parents like, oh, we went and got takeout for dinner. I picked it up from the restaurant, and then my husband and kids and I all ate in the park together. So that way the kids still felt like they were going out to dinner, but we weren't exposing them to other people. And of course, other people may have a different practice. They may not think that it's a big deal to eat in a restaurant, and that's totally fine. As I mentioned before, different people are going to have different practices, and that's okay. But I think the point to take away from that is that, Stephanie has had good success with being very specific and directive with her parents. My mom does the exact opposite if I tell her to do something. And my friend Elaine has had good luck with sort of, suggesting things or sharing news articles rather than telling her parents what to
Which
do.
is smart. So smart. Yeah.
Yeah. So we also have Heather Estes on the line. Heather, while you're talking, I'm going to try to find a picture of you. Actually, I might just hold up my phone. This is Heather, and Heather has a new baby named Nolan.
Oh.
And we've all been so excited about Nolan's arrival. So there's Heather and Nolan. Heather is a chemist. She loves asphalt. One of her favorite phrases is that she loves the smell of asphalt. She was previously with IBHS, and now she is with GAF in their codes department. She is a dog mom and lives in North Carolina and has a new baby, Nolan. So Heather, I know that none of Nolan's grandparents have seen him. Can you tell us a little bit about the conversations that you had with them, or did you not have conversations, or how have you negotiated that issue with Nolan's grandparents that he is not available for visitors right now?
Sure. So our family, they all live in the New England area, so it's not down the street or what have you. And then my parents are all over the age of 60 and have their own personal health issues. And my husband's parents are a little bit younger, but we have nieces and nephews. And so we had plans for people to come starting in July. But with the Carolinas numbers going up again, we actually, in the last couple of days, have had the conversation of, for your safety, we would prefer that you not come. And so it's been several conversations, putting the information out there. We find that being as direct as possible and not beating around the bush is helpful. And then letting people process the information. We do about weekly Zoom calls with each set of the grandparents so they can see him and get their one-on-one. But I personally spoke to my mother today, and she was near tears because I had to tell her that we really didn't feel like it was safe for her to come. But the time will come, and she said, I just want to hold my grandson. So it's been difficult.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So I think that's awesome that you respect that people need time to process bad news or news, whatever, right? I think sometimes when we get new news, it's shocking at first. And so I think that's awesome that you're being really direct, you're putting the information out there, and then allowing people time to process. And that must be hard for you though, if you're on the receiving end of the processing.
It's definitely been a challenge, and keeping in mind that the end of my pregnancy and then the delivery all happened in the midst of all this. So it's been quite the adventure for all of us. But happy to say that my husband and Nolan and myself, we haven't been affected by it.
Right.
Unfortunately, my in-laws have had the virus, but they've recovered successfully. So, we have varying degrees of exposure to it. But yeah, it's been nothing that was expected has happened, I guess. But
welcome to motherhood.
Yes.
Great preparation.
But the important thing is that everybody's happy and healthy, and that's what we try to remind ourselves.
I think that's what's so frustrating about the virus is that, one person gets it, one, 40-year-old man who's healthy and a runner, he gets it. And, he's in the hospital for 3 weeks and on the ventilator and near death and, just a horrible experience. And then you have someone else who gets it and they're like, yeah, I had a sore throat for a couple days. And I think that's what's so confusing is that, I sort of feel like, I would be fine. But then I don't know that. And that, at least for me, is what is so frustrating, is that there's so much about this that is unknown, and it's absolutely exasperating for that.
I agree.
So Stephanie, you have 2 adult children, and Heather, I'm going to come back to you in a couple minutes and ask you to talk about how you're staying connected. And I'll share a little bit of information that I researched too. So Stephanie, you talked a little bit about, you've got 2 adult children that live near you and your parents, but you stay connected with your 2 kids in different ways. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yes, I would. So I have a son who's the oldest, and I have a daughter. My son is going to be 30 here in August, and my daughter is 27. And our relationships have always been just like this. Tyler, what'd you have for lunch today? Oh, food. Mandy, what did you have for lunch today? Oh, the worst sandwich ever, but the best chips. So I either got no information or too much information, depend on who I was speaking with. So that's pretty much still the same relationship we have. It's very common for me not to talk to my son all week long. He tends to only reach out when he needs something, but yet we're connected on a weekly basis with his daughter. He knows that I'm going to be there, that I take care of his daughter. I either see him in the morning on Sundays if he has to work late, or he comes home and I see my daughter-in-law, or he comes home and relieves me and I go home. And then my daughter, she isn't married yet. She lives in West Lynn. And I talk to her every day on the phone, but yet I don't see her anymore. We talk every day. I know what's going on with her on a daily basis, where I don't with my son, but I don't see my daughter. And I told her last night or the night before, I said, I haven't seen you in weeks. And this is what she said. Well, you just don't like me anymore since you have that new grandbaby. And I said, I've never really liked you before. No, I'm teasing. But yeah, so so we have definitely different relationships, but they aren't, it's just not different for me. And I'll tease with my daughter-in-law sometimes, and she teases back with me. She's like, did Tyler tell you? And my always instant is nope. I don't even know what the question is, but nope. Yeah, because
Probably not. Yeah.
Probably not, because he never has in the past, so probably not. Yeah, so that's kind of our joke back and forth. So it's different how everybody's still getting what they need. It's just the presentation, the process is different. So yeah, and being a grandma to my son's baby, you know, I think has even kind of broadened our relationship a little bit. You know, he trusts me with the baby. They know that I'm never going to let anything happen to her, that I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to follow his wife's rules. I mean, let's be honest with it. It's her rules. And I'm great with it. I'm down, you know? Yeah. So yeah, it's been an experience. And like we said about the unspoken guidelines, they never were really talked about. We just knew what was happening, and they knew that I was going to do everything to make sure that I was healthy and not bringing in any, you know, illness into their house. But in all reality, I was probably more exposed to it going to their house than me bringing it in.
Probably.
You
Yeah.
know? Yeah, but I just wasn't going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about the things I can't control, because you could make yourself crazy about that. But I feel like through this whole process, everybody has got what they needed from each other. And you know, now that we have these handy dandy cell phones, and my daughter-in-law is so great about taking pictures daily and posting them in a group. And even though my mom and my mother-in-law are not part of that group, I always forward those photos onto them, so they still feel like they're connected. I've Zoomed with Susie, with my mom, when I'm at the baby's house, just so that my mom can kind of be, you know, I got her to Zoom, you know, which was another process. But yeah, but she's got it. We got it down, and so she can interact with the baby with the phone. So we've made the best out of it.
Yeah, you've got some good resources there. When I did some research about this, just sort of seeing what was out there in the popular media, you know, about what other people were doing, everybody mentioned video calls.
Mm-hmm.
And some really good advice that I saw was the grandparents can use video calls to read to their grandchildren or play with them. When my daughter was really little, I would FaceTime my mom, because we've never lived together since I was 18. But I would FaceTime my mom on my iPad and put the iPad inside my daughter's dollhouse. And then Ruthie would sit in front of the dollhouse and play her dolls and talk to my mom as she was playing. And so it was like they were playing together.
Right.
Other people that I found do a lot of using video calls to read to their grandchildren, you know, like reading the book and showing the pictures. And that has a double benefit of it's something that the grandparent and the grandchild can do together. And it buys the parents, you know, 20 minutes of free time where their child is entertained. And so I thought that was a cool idea. Several people also mentioned creating a group chat like WhatsApp or a private Facebook group. And that way then it's a little bit different than your phone blowing up with text messages. That way you can check into the WhatsApp group or the private Facebook group as you have time or as permits, and engage a little bit. I know I get distracted with text messages sometimes, so right. I don't like my family to text me unless it's an emergency. And then, of course, people talked about sending cards and letters, you know, especially kids love getting mail. And so going back to that sort of, you know, a little bit of that old fashioned notion of sending cards and letters. I keep in touch with my mom by, and my sisters, for a while, we tried to work out a schedule, like everybody make sure that you're checking in with mom on this day, but it just didn't really work. So I have sort of a three-pronged approach that I use with my mom. If the day has gone by and I haven't touched base with her, I try to send her a text message. My mom is one, she doesn't necessarily, gosh, I hope she doesn't watch this. My mom doesn't necessarily like hearing a whole lot about what I'm doing and what's going on with me. She wants me to ask her what's going on with her. So I'm conscious of that in text messages. We also have a group chat with my sisters and I. And so if I sort of, you know, if it's evening and I'm like, oh gosh, you know, nobody's chatted on the group chat today with mom, then I might send a message just so that she has something to read. We also FaceTime with my mom sometimes at dinner time. You know, usually that lasts about 5 or 10 minutes before my teenagers start fighting, and then I'm embarrassed, so then I want to get off the phone. But we'll put the iPad up on a little stand and put it at the table with us, and then we'll sort of chat with her while we're eating dinner. But really probably the thing that's most successful for me for keeping in touch with my mom is I have created a habit that every time I get in the car, I think about her. So my commute from home to my office is only 11 minutes. But if I call her as soon as I get in the car, that's really enough time to check in. And so there's some psychological term for this where you attach one habit to another. And so when I get in the car and put my hands on the steering wheel, that cues me to think of my mom. And then I will call her on my cell phone and talk hands-free while I'm driving. But I only call her landline. My thought process is that if she's out running errands or going on a walk with a friend, then she doesn't need to hear from me because she's already engaged.
Right.
So I only call her landline. And that way I'm not, you know, bothering her if she's already busy. And so that's just something that works for us. This is tying back a little bit to negotiation, but I had really encouraged my mom to create a quarantine bubble as soon as this started in mid-March. So my mom has a quarantine bubble with another friend who's also a new widow, and then with 2 other friends of theirs that are a couple. And so they do things like they go on, you know, day trips to historical sites in Alabama. They will get lunch and eat at each other's houses. When my children and I came to visit, my mom had a conversation with them and let them know that we were coming, and then she kept her distance from them afterwards. So that has worked really well for her. And my sisters and I really encouraged her to do that, and that's actually probably one of the few pieces of advice that she has actually taken from me. So Heather, you are using video calls or FaceTime to stay in touch with Nolan's grandparents. What are some other things that you're doing? Do you call them at the same time every day? Do you have a schedule? Like, how do you sort of figure that out?
So we don't have a schedule, which is, again, one of those crazy changes after becoming a parent. Nolan sets the schedule right now.
That's true.
But my father has learned how to do Zoom because he tutors students. So he was very proud of that fact. So he sets up Zoom meetings. So I give the grandparents options based on Nolan's feeding schedule. So we know he's not too cranky or sleeping. And so they can choose, 3 or 9 or what have you. And then they can set up the meeting if they want. That's worked with my father. For our extended family, I started using this app called Family Album. And we actually my husband and I have decided to limit Nolan's exposure on social media. Again, those personal decisions. So we don't post a lot of pictures of him, but I upload pretty much daily pictures of Nolan into this app. And so the grandparents on their own time and the aunts and uncles, they can all log in and look through the pictures as they want and kind of see Nolan's adventure. And then I use an app called 1 Second a Day to take like a video clip of him, and then I'll compile that at the end of the month. So we have these videos of how he's grown over the last 2 months, and they get it, him hiccuping or him snoring or him crying or, in little clips. And we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from that. And then the last thing that I found really helped was like for Mother's Day, I sent my mom a digital picture frame. So it had pictures already loaded, so she didn't have to do anything, but that was her own personalized pictures. And then for Father's Day, I took Nolan's handprint and made one of those, your hands down the best grandpa ever, and sent those to the grandfathers. So I think that gave them a connection to him.
Yeah.
We'll see what else we come up with, but those are our go-tos.
Those are awesome. Yeah. And, I think, as I think it really bears repeating, right? That different people have different practices and expectations. And, it's like with everything with, families and parenting, you want to do what works for you, be respectful of other people. It's interesting. I heard this quote the other day about familial relationships. And one of them was what Stephanie said, right? That your relationships right now are going to be largely the same as they were before, just amplified. So I think, as we mentioned before, if I had taken the time to check in with my sisters about my plans about going to visit my mom, that would have been better, because that was consistent with how our family operated instead of deviating from what our family normally does. But I do think that makes a lot of sense, that relationships and the problems in the relationships are not necessarily going to change during this time, but they are going to become amplified. And so I try to stay focused on that to help me remember to give my mom and my sisters even more grace than I think that I do normally. And I know that they give me that same grace too, because I'm super annoying as an older sister and an oldest daughter lots of times. So Stephanie, what last words do you have as you think about all of these issues? Or what are you doing next? What are your plans over the summer? Are you changing things? Are you keeping them the same?
No, I mean, for right now, I've kind of told my mom that maybe in the next couple of weeks that they could open things up. And I told them, hey, if you run out of something and you know that I'm not around, I said, if you have to go get something, one item, that's fine. I said, that's fine, but make sure you have your mask and wash the second you come through. So I want to lighten it up. But my mom, she texted me yesterday or the day before, and she's like, hey, is it okay? She asked me, is it okay if I run into Target? And I said, no. No. What do you need at Target? No. I said, no, I'll go to Target over the weekend. I'll get you, so, she's better about asking, where Paul, my stepdad, he's ready to be done with it, but very respectful that I am trying to keep them healthy. And I've had to tell him, it's not that I want to control your life, because I don't. I want to make sure that you guys stay healthy. And you had talked about compromises and ways to put things to people, how like reading your USA Today news article versus telling him. Well, I had to get real with him, because he wasn't going to listen to his children. And I said, look, Paul, I said, nothing can happen to you, because I am not at the level that I can care for Susie full time. I said, so don't mess it up for me. And so that's, and then he giggled. He thought that was funny. So he understood it. So I think not just with COVID and families, with everything that's going on right now in the entire United States and other countries, I think we need to be respectful of other people's opinions. There's not just one way to look at it. There's lots of different ways. And just because somebody doesn't view it the same way you do, doesn't mean it's good, bad, or right or wrong. It
Right.
just means it's different. So be kind to one another. Let's come together and let's get through this instead of fighting about all the stupid things we don't need to fight about. So, and how you do it and whether you choose to wear a mask or not wear a mask really is not my business. Yeah. So I think that's the big thing is this is going to be done, and let's just do what we need to do and do it nicely and respectfully so we don't have to do it anymore. That's my take on it.
I hope so. Man, I hope this is going to end at some point. I mean, we know it's going to end. We just don't know when. So I've compiled a list of resources that we've mentioned during our time here today. And I wanted to share them. The epidemiologist that I follow to help me make decisions is aaronbromage.com. He is a professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He's a man, although he spells his Aaron like the feminine version, but aaronbromage.com. I use WhatsApp to keep in touch with my family and a group of friends, and I like that better than text messaging. Mm-hmm. Heather referenced using Family Album and another app called 1 Second a Day. And then I got lots of feedback about using private Facebook groups as well. So I wanted to share those with you all. I also wanted to mention a couple other things that you might be interested in. One is that, we've had we have probably over 25 webinars that are archived on our website now. This is available only for members. So you'll have to be a member to access these. And I send out an email once a month with the passwords to the member only pages on the website. But we have all of our webinars archived here. So if you're a council leader, you can watch those together with your council and then discuss them later. If you have a corporate group of women at your company, you can watch them together and discuss later. Or you can just, watch them while you're eating lunch someday and learn some new tips and tricks there. I also wanted to mention our calendar. In the beginning of Corona, we were having 2 to 3 events a week. That is an unsustainable pace. So we have slowed it down to once a week. Next week, we have 2 items. We've got a happy hour on the 23rd. That's being hosted by Jennifer Keegan and Michelle Boykin. And those are super casual. They're a Zoom call and people just hop on, and usually the host of the happy hour will ask people to introduce themselves and share a story of how they got into roofing. And it's just a really fun time to hang out. And then the Oklahoma Council is having a session on the 25th about building your personal brand. And they are opening that up to everyone in the membership. As I mentioned, we are undergoing a massive recruitment into the industry campaign. So our recruitment committee is headed by Brenna Driver of Owens Corning and Paula Felix with Aspen Mark Roofing in the Dallas area. And we are partnering with Roofers Coffee Shop. So we are using their platform to post jobs. We have a really easy process for submitting these through the National Women in Roofing website. The Roofers Coffee Shop will then post the job opening for free on their site. And then there's also a special ad there with all of the jobs that were submitted through National Women in Roofing. Of course, these are jobs that are open to men and women. But it is really nice to work in a place where that there's other women there, or that at least it's a company that is supportive of women in the roofing industry. So this is not restricted to members only. We are piloting this program, and at this time we're leaving it open to everyone. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that and really encourage your participation there. And especially if you have friends that are looking for a new career or might be unemployed right now, any time is a great time to start a career in the roofing industry, but especially right now is a great time. So I want to thank Stephanie Baird for hopping on and chatting with us today and sharing her experiences with grandchildren, adult children, and aging parents. And I hope that we will see you next week at our happy hour. So thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon. Bye
Thank
now.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Stephanie. See you
Bye-bye.
later.
Are we good?